Built by horse players for horse players, AmWager is designed for speed, power, and ease of use. AmWager brings CAW-style tools to everyday horse players, including Dutching, ABC Ticket Maker, and Pro Percent, an advanced betting tool that lets you assign weighted percentages and build multiple structured wagers with a single click. Every month, AmWager turns the odds in your favor with 0% takeout on select tracks. These promos offer you up to $100 more for your winning bets and giving you value for your wagers not offered anywhere else. Rated 4.7 stars on Google with over 200 reviews, AmWager is trusted by horse players who expect more from their wagering platform. If you're looking for better tools and better value, you need AmWager. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit amwager.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 or older where applicable. Gambling problem? Please call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE.
Welcome to the Sport of Kings podcast, episode 354, sponsored by AmWager. Go to amwager.com to see all their promotions, including the 0% takeout promotion on win bets on this Saturday's Gulfstream Park card. That'll include the Florida Derby. That's right, 0% takeout. So, it's something that you want to take advantage of if you can. As always, I also welcome your feedback on Twitter/X. My handle is @Derby1592. That's @Derby1592. I have to make a plug for my new book, Betting on Horses. If you go to betwiththebestmedia.com, that's betwiththebestmedia, all one word.com, you can learn more about the book, hopefully order the book, and you'll get the early discounted price right now. If you like the podcast, you'll love the book. I think whether you're a beginner, just a novice, very experienced, there's something in the book for you. You'll get something out of it. I encourage you to take a look. If you want to support the podcast, a great way to do that is to go to betwiththebestmedia.com and click on the link. Get your copy of the book. If you like it, let me know what you think and spread the word to your fellow horse players and friends. This week, let's move on to the races. I'm joined on the show by a special guest, the director of media for Crown's Way Racing and the host of Bettin' and Boozin' on the HHH Racing podcast. His name's Kyle Roscoe, and he's going to join me in a detailed discussion about races 10 through 14, including the Florida Derby from Gulfstream Park on Saturday. We'll focus on finding and exploiting value. We'll talk about our strongest handicapping opinions and how we might leverage those opinions using optimal betting strategies. Hi, Kyle. How is it going?
Going fantastic, Chris. Thanks again for having me on, which I think is now the third time. Of course, the first two times were with Scott. But very glad you kept this going, and I'm very happy to be on again.
Yeah, I miss Scott. I'm sure the listeners do too. He's retired now. He might be listening to the show, so if you are, hello, Scott. So we'll have to fill his shoes during the show. Right now is a great time for horse players. Derby fever is in full swing this week and next week. We'll get at the end of next Saturday, we'll have a pretty good idea of the Derby field and who the main contenders are. And we've got a doozy, probably the best prep so far this year, probably will be the best prep. And we'll get a chance to talk about that. But there's some other good races leading up to that. And before we get started on it, I like to find out from our guest kind of what your overall strategy and approach and process is for deciding which races to look at, and when you look at a race, how you decide whether or not you're going to bet, and then when you decide to bet, how you go about deciding how you're going to actually bet the race, which pools you're going to bet into. So at kind of a high level, give us the overview of your approach.
Of course, and for anyone that's watched the show, they'd get this inclination very quickly. I'm a very driven pace handicapper. I'll take a look at the pace scenario before Timeform US, which has a fantastic new software where they kind of lay out visually how the pace scenario is going to look with their pace figures. I used to map out my own pace scenario and how exactly it was going to go. I used to work at Arlington Park, and for 5 years, I did that every single race, every single day. So it's my number one angle, trying to find the lone speed or a lot of speed with the deep closer that runs, probably better buyers and something like that. But in terms of betting pools, Chris, I like to keep it as simple as possible, and I see a lot of, big swings, with pick fives and all this type of stuff where, you can hit that massive one for 70, 80, $90,000, especially on a day like the Florida Derby, if those prices come in. But I keep it as simple as possible. You'll really only see me dip into the win bets and the double pools, which in my opinion is the best bet in all of horse racing. Maybe an exacta here or there, but very vertically oriented and very heavy in the win pools and double pools. But in terms of the handicapping, we have our own show, and it's very, all over the place. We're covering Gulfstream, Aqueduct, Santa Anita, all over the place through the year. So it takes a little bit, and I look at all these races, and the way that I kind of decide which race to bet on is one, if either I can find one of those pace angles with the lone speed, or the deep closer with a lot of speed. And I don't shy away from betting favorites. I know a lot of people try to find value, and that's absolutely the way to bet in this game. But if I see a favorite at 2-1, and I think that this horse should be 6-5, inherently that includes a lot of value for me to bet a horse that I feel like has a 40-50% chance to win this race, as long as the pace scenario that I've envisioned goes out. So, but we'll actually see it in this card. I have a couple plays in here with the pace angles that some are 5-1 and some are 5-2. So, I go back and around, but mainly I keep it as simple as possible.
So you're a pace guy. That's what you're looking for, some pace, a race where the pace can lead you towards some value. And then when it comes to the betting, you try to keep it real simple, and you're focused on win bets, and then maybe you'll spread to a double if you like an adjacent race, or maybe play an exacta if you have another opinion in a particular race. But that's kind of your main approach.
Yeah, exactas are mainly are used for when there's a very heavy favorite, something like 3-5, 4-5 that I can't see myself placing a win bet on. However, I have no inclination that this horse will lose. I'll try and find some good value with the exacta, because with a 3-5, a lot of the times you can get an exacta 4-1, 5-1, 6-1, even with a second or third choice type horse. And the thing that I always say and joke about on the podcast is people look for 4, 5, 6-1s all the time, and it's so hard to find them. But when a 3-5 staring in the face, and you can get like a second or third chase horse, you can get 4 or 5-1 on an exacta, it's just as good as picking a 4 or 5-1 shot, just trying to get that inherent value there. But yeah, just try and keep it as simple as possible. And limited budget, just moved over 2,000 miles across the country. So especially with the young guy budget constraint that I got going on, the doubles and win bets definitely help in that regard. Because a lot of the time, you only have to hit 1 out of 4 to break even on the day, and you hit 2 out of 4, and all of a sudden you're in the profit.
Yeah, and you have a lot less, those long losing streaks you can have playing the more exotic wagers. You don't have to worry about that. And I do like the fact you're in the younger generation. We need more of you out there playing. So I'm glad to see you getting, really getting into the game. I think it's a great game, and we definitely need that next generation of players. So, those of you that are younger out there, this is a great game. Just once you get into it, you'll get hooked. So hopefully you'll stick with it. All right. Last thing before we get into the races, I like to talk about the betting menu at the track that we're covering. And Gulfstream is pretty average for most bets. They do have what I consider to be a player-friendly bet, the special all-turf pick 3 that has the higher $3 minimum and a 15% takeout. That's probably the most player-friendly bet. We will be covering the 3 races that comprise that Alter Pick 3 this week. And we're going races 10 through 14, and I think it's 10, 12, and 13 that are part of that. So that's something to keep in mind. They also have their middle Pick 5 supposedly keeps the teams out. And in this case, I think that's races 6 through 10. So if you like playing Pick 5s, that might be the one you want to focus on because the teams are really good at the Pick 5s. They like to extract value from those pools. Makes it really tough on the regular retail players. So if you like the Pick 5, that's probably the way to go. They also have some special bets with Santa Anita, 15% takeout on their Coast to Coast Pick 5 and Sunset Pick 6. If you want to go, again, those are tough wagers to hit. But if the teams aren't participating, that makes the payouts a little bit better. And then on the less positive side, they have a jackpot Rainbow Pick 6. That's a terrible bet for retail players, even on mandatory payout days. So stay away from that. And other than the pools I mentioned, the teams are very active at Gulfstream, so it makes it tough. That doesn't mean you can't play, but you have to make sure you really found value, like Kyle said, before you wade into the pools. And probably the simpler pools are better because the more complex the pool, the more an advantage those teams have in their bet execution. So keep that in mind. But this week, actually, it's a tough hurdle to overcome takeout and the teams. But this week, if you're playing at Amwager, don't forget 0% takeout, better than the teams. You're getting better takeout than the teams if you bet through to win at Amwager. So if you are betting through Amwager focus there, that would be a good place to start. If you're not, you might want to think about joining up at amwager.com. It's a really good promotion. All right, enough of all that. We teed everything up. Now let's get into the races. We're going to start with race 10, the Sanibel Island Stakes, going 7.5 furlongs on the turf. So this one starts pretty close to the turn. It's a 2-turn race. I consider it a route race, even though it's a little less than a mile. It's for 3-year-old fillies, and in this race, I guess the favorite will be at least on the morning line are the 2 foreign shippers for Brendan Walsh, the 9 Secret Hideaway, the 10 Smexy. Looks like Secret Hideaway's the favorite. What are you thinking about those horses? Are you going to lean on those? Are you going against those? What do you think about this race, Kyle?
I'm going to play against those in here, but the one horse that a couple of my co-hosts liked was Secret Hideaway. Secret Hideaway has been working with a horse named Imagination the Lady. And for those that remember, she ran in the Juvenile Fillies Turf, ran 4th there, but also a winner of the Grade 2 Jessamine last year. I think Secret Hideaway worked in trio with those, with her and one other. So Secret Hideaway looks to be good. And if she's getting bet at the windows, on the board, you might want to be looking there. I ended up going a little bit away from them. I ended up going with the number 5 Tam Tam in this race for Phil Bauer and Junior Alvarado. This will be second off the layoff. And talking about pace in here, there's not a whole lot in this race. You have the 4 to the inside and Sakane for Saffie Joseph and Edwin Gonzalez, and the 8 Ligina, who's coming off a Florida Oaks try and losing to a horse that made me a lot of money that day in Dandona at Tampa Bay, and I was actually there present that day. But Ligina is not necessarily the fastest horse, going 48, being, second, pressing the pace. I'm hoping either Tam Tam gets a really nice trip sitting off of Sakane, or if the 8 does go, I think Junior Alvarado will be more than happy to take back a little bit and skip back. This was almost $1 million purchase by Rigney Racing, who trusts Phil Bauer with a lot of their horses. The other sibling, a couple siblings in there, not done a whole lot of running. The Avoir, who was originally a Peter Miller horse on the West Coast, was a turf sprinter but did go 6.5 down the hill and won pretty convincingly there. So with that type of breeding, I don't think the 7.5 distance is going to be any type of issue. And the one thing that people don't realize a lot of the time, at least casual players, is this 7.5 is a really weird distance because, as you mentioned, Chris, it's really, really close to that first turn. So these two Euros are going to have a lot to deal with coming out of the gate. Secret Hideaway, watching those replays overseas, she's been a type of farther back type horse. So maybe she'll just take back and the turn won't be a problem. But Smexy has been a little bit towards mid pack, a little keen to go on. So that could be something to look at. If she's 5 wide, she's going to have a lot of chance to go through. But there's a couple others in here I was a little interested in. But Tam Tam is actually one of my more aggressive plays as long as she stays up towards that 4 or 5 to 1 mark. I think she goes below 4 to 1. I might be a little bit more hesitant to play her on the win end, but 4 to 1, 9 to 2, 5 to 1 is more than enough value for me to take a shot with Tam Tam.
Yeah, she broke her maiden on her first try on turf, so that's always a good sign too. So you would think, off the break, first time on turf, she has some upside. And 5 to 1 doesn't seem like a bad price on that horse. You mentioned the workouts on Secret Hideaway. I watched those. She has there was actually a 3-horse work with Secret Hideaway and Smexy, the 10-horse, and Imagination Lady, the horse you mentioned. And Secret Hideaway has definitely been outworking Smexy. That doesn't mean that she'll outwork her, outrun her on the afternoon, but she did seem like she was taking to the American style racing better. But I thought even Secret Hideaway kind of got drubbed by Imagination the Lady. So I'm not sure that horse is anything special, at least based on the workouts. So I'm with you. I'm willing to fade those two, especially from that outside post. I'm not sure why they run these 7.5. It might be because there's so many turf races on the card. They want to move things around to protect the turf course. I think for this race, the rail's at 0, and they move it out. It's almost like 2 different turf courses throughout the day. But I do think there is that chance to get hung wide. And also those Euros have a tendency not to break real alertly, so that's something to think about. But of the U.S. horses, you mentioned the 8-horse Laina, and that's probably the horse I like in here. I thought her race 2 back was really good, where she won pretty impressively. And she kind of made a nice move in the middle of the race, and the pace was solid, and she finished it off. And that was going a mile. They stretched her out in that Florida Oaks, which was definitely a tougher field than this, I think. And she kind of got caught up in even a faster pace. Couldn't quite finish it out going a mile and 16th, but now cutting back to 7.5. I think she might be sitting right off your horse that you like, Tam Tam, early. Maybe even gets the lead. I think, she's capable of it. Just kind of depends on the rider intent. But either way, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of pace on. Those two should get a good trip. And I just think Laina might be the better of the two. But, Tam Tam, you can make a case, has that upside. And then there's a couple long shots, I think, in here that could, connect the stars. That horse is 15 to 1 on the morning line. Really hasn't had great trips in the recent races and hasn't run poorly. I think that horse could run better than it has recently. It doesn't have to really improve much to win. And then the 2-horse Super Landslide, making only its 3rd start. It's like Tam Tam won on its first try going on turf. And that horse is well bred by Tappet out of an exchange rate mare that has had some, has some pretty good siblings. So, and it drew a good post. So this is a race where I think if you fade those favorites on the outside, you might get some value. I think my heavy lean would be Laina, and I might play some exactas with the 2 and the 6. Maybe even look at some vertical plays, but that's kind of where I'd lean. How would you be betting this race? A win bet on Tam Tam? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, that's going to be my play. Like I said, as long as she goes off at that inherent value that I see, I believe she should probably be, she has a lot of way to improve, as you mentioned, Chris, and she goes up to an 80. I wouldn't be surprised. Second off, a 3-year-old campaign now coming in here. And I'm not one too much for jockey gymnastics either. But I did notice that Junior Alvarado does hop off Laina onto Tam Tam. So that could be an intent way as well. But straight win bet as long as she's above 4-1. I actually really do like Connect the Stars. I think that's a really nice long shot to be able to play underneath if you're an exotic player, exactas, trifectas, something in that type of realm. Vekoma View is also another one that's had some nice success and is a half to a Cliffs, who was second in the American Oaks out at Santa Anita for Cherie DeVoe. So that's another one you might be able to play. I just think there's a lot of value in a race like this, Chris, where, if the 2 euros to the outside do take a lot of money and you don't like them, there's just inherent value elsewhere. And starting with our 2 horses, I think, are the most likely next ones up in Tam Tam and Lahina.
So what would be what's the minimum price you would play Tam Tam at? What's your fair odds line? Where do you need to get above to want to play that horse?
I probably need above 4-1. I think 4-1 or higher is more than enough for me. If the 2 euros take that type of money, I think she will be 5-1, because Phil Bauer is a smaller barn, but when he never really puts his horses in spots that they can't win or at least not be competitive in. See, he's only run 6 at the competitive meet, or at the championship meet, at Gulfstream, and he's 3 for 6 in the money. So always with intent with Phil Bauer, and 4-1 is probably the lowest I'd go.
So is that it, just a win bet in here, or would you consider playing some exactas?
Exactas, especially with favorites out, I usually reserve my exacta plays when I have a heavy favorite on top, which there's a couple in this sequence. One, I don't know if I'm with or against. You'll find out in a second. But just a straight win bet, I think, for me. The Gulfstream Park Oaks is also a very interesting race that, if you like Prom Queen, who's probably going to be, or even She Be Smooth, who won the Devona Dale last time on Fountain of Youth Day, I could see a double with She Be Smooth. Maybe get somewhere around 10-1 on that type of double, because even though she's gonna probably She Be Smooth's gonna be 6-5 in the Oaks, which of course we're not talking about, but Tam Tam's your third choice at least in this race, so that should create some inherent value as well with a pretty likely favorite in the last.
So it sounds like you like to play winners. So like you're saying you're more comfortable playing a double than an exacta, because you don't only have to worry about the winner. That's kind of, I'm sensing that. Is that fair to say?
That is very fair to say, and that'll be very apparent as we go through. I just always, and this goes back to my days at Arlington, where I would be the first to tell you I was definitely nowhere near the handicapper, at least that I think that I am now. But I like to keep it as simple as possible. For me, just trying to pick the winner in a lot of these races is hard enough. Then trying to see, who will be a good enough horse to finish, especially if you get to trifectas, who's going to run third, unless you like a big price, which there was actually one that I'll give a quick shout out to Howard, who had the 50-1 shot in the Virginia Oaks, finishing second. He played a bunch of exactas and tries with that horse. That makes a lot of sense because, blowing up the tote board with a 50-1 creates a lot of inherent value, obviously. But I like to keep it, that's a long-winded way of saying I like to keep it as simple as possible with win bets and doubles. I just feel like I have the most control over betting when I'm betting those types of pools.
All right. Well, but you were able to slip a attaboy in for your pal there, so that was good. All right.
Got to give him one. One.
Okay. Well, he owes you one. All right. Let's go to race 11. That's the Army Mule Stakes, going 7 furlongs for older horses. This interesting race, you got a combination of kind of 4-year-olds making their 4-year-old debut. That came, classy kind of horses. You got a couple of other horses coming off layoffs, older horses that have some back class, and then you've got some with recent form. The favorite will probably be Macho Music, the 9 horse. He's one of the 4-year-olds making his 4-year-old debut. What are you thinking about Macho Music? What are you thinking about this race?
This is a race, Chris, where I'm against those 2 horses to the outside. I think there's a lot of pace in this race, headed by Macho Music and Owen Almighty. Then you also have horses like Concrete Glory that are super fast. Rolando's been really quick out of the gate. Even Back 'em Up's been very close to the pace in a lot of his races. So there's just a lot of pace in here, and I think it sets up perfectly for 2 horses to the inside, and the number 3 Scotland and the number 2 Pentathlon. I was actually on top with Pentathlon for a lot of this when I was handicapping this race. However, I did end up going with the number 3 Scotland. I feel like he's been very, very good in his races where he's run very good. I know that was really just intuitive for me to say, but going back to Saratoga when he made his debut at 5, he ran a 94 coming from off the pace. I know losing the Concrete Glory that day, but that was the time where Saratoga, when it got a lot of rain, was very speed favoring. Both Concrete Glory and Little Knee were up front the whole way. Scotland was really the only one making up any type of ground in that race. So I give a lot of credit to that. And we all know Concrete Glory's come back to run good numbers, and then Little Knee also came back to win that next race after that. So losing to those two at that type of time was not a bad thing at all. Then, going to the Forego, losing 1 length behind Bookham Dano, the Vosberg, keeping a lot of really nice company, now coming back for his 6-year-old year. I thought the workouts on this horse was very interesting because not only has he been working very well and working very steadily, you have February 14th was a 3 of 90 work. March 1st was a 5 of 73 work at Payson, and March 13th was a 3 of 64 work. But then last time out, Bill tried to give him a 3 furlong dart, and he ran that in 35 and 4. So I don't know if they're trying to inject maybe a little bit more speed in this horse to keep him a little bit more tactical. But I thought it was a very interesting intent-wise for Bill Mott, but never is a worry for these types of layoffs with him. Junior Alvarado back aboard as well. And as I mentioned, the pace scenario really fits well for him. And at 9-2, I feel like that's good enough. Maybe even might drift up a little bit because his last couple races have not been the best speed figure-wise. But if he can get back to those mid-90s, even that high 90, back at 4 years old, I feel like that might be a little bit of a stretch. But the mid-90s is more than enough to win this race. And Pentathlon, real quick, is a horse that's run really good numbers. Shug put him in the Cigar Mile, so he obviously has a lot of thought to the talent of this horse. But a lot of people are saying, Shug's 2 for 43, kind of write this horse off. It's Shug McGahee, guys. I mean, he can train. Everyone goes through their cold spurts, but Shug could win 10 races this weekend if he has those in, and no one would bat an eye at it because it's Shug McGahee. So I don't give too much credit to the cold streak that he's been on. But this is one that's just maybe not to the upper echelon as some other horses, but might have the most inherent upside due to the numbers he's running at lower races. So I think Scotland Pentathlon are the two I'm going to be leaning on here. But there's also some speed horses in here that are really good. The question is just the pace scenario.
So you're thinking that with Concrete Glory and Macho Music, they're gonna set a pretty fast pace, and that might set it up for someone to come from off the pace.
That's correct. And I like, that 3 furlong work, as I said, maybe trying to keep Scotland a little tactical because Gulfstream's not one necessarily you can close from the clouds at that like Fairgrounds we've seen in the past. So need to be at least a little bit into contention going around that final turn into the quarter pole. So I think Scotland fits that type of bill real nice.
So the coming off the layoff as a 6-year-old, is that a concern for you?
It always is a concern for me. Mainly 6 years old is kind of that line that I draw. Usually off the layoff going older than 6 is where I have a lot of doubt. And actually I'll have that angle a little bit later. But so the 6-year-old does, but with the way he's working, it kind of negated that concern for me a little bit.
So you mentioned Macho Music and Owen Almighty. Is it the layoff that makes you feel like they're vulnerable? Is that what you're looking at there?
That, and then coupled with the other horses that want to be towards the front,
the like pace,
or yeah. So the 1-2 punch of that per se is what's making me stay away from those two to the outside.
Yeah, it seems like that makes a lot of sense with Macho Music. I thought Owen Almighty was more. He's not like a need to lead type like Macho Music. So I thought from a pace standpoint, he could maybe fall into a pretty good trip, especially drawing that outside post. Did you or any consideration of that? To me, he seems like, for me, Owen Almighty is kind of the classic horse that was a victim of Derby fever.
Yeah.
I don't think he was ever going to be a 1.25 mile horse, but he ran so well. As a 3-year-old, they kind of had to try it, and they ran him in the bluegrass, and he chased a super hot pace, and kind of got tired late. but they still went on in the Derby, and he again chased a hot pace and tired late, but he didn't completely spit the bit. He actually ran better at Churchill than I thought he would. But that kind of knocked him out. They tried to bring him back for a couple races a few months later, but he was cooked. But now he's had all that time off. To me, he's kind of interesting. I would never play him at this likely price, but I think he might. He's a one-turn horse. He drew a good post. He could get a good trip. Of the favorites, Scott, the three favorites I think are going to be Scotland, Macho Music, and Owen Almighty. I would lean towards Owen Almighty, but I don't think any of them are playable. The horse I think is probably the best bet is the other horse you mentioned, Pentathlon. If you get 8-1 on him, he is kind of a classic Shug horse. But he doesn't push him. He lets them kind of develop on their own. He got pretty good as a 3-year-old, then tailed off. And recently he's had, he's won 2 of his last 3 races, and both those races really were kind of slow-paced races that he still managed to kind of destroy the field in. They maybe weren't the greatest of fields, but he looked really good. They tried him that Cigar Mile. He was probably just a little overmatched in there. And the race before that was on the turf. So to me, he's in really good form. He definitely will benefit from a hot pace. I like him a lot. If you get 8-1, to me, he's the bet. But there's others in here that have a shot. But for me, I'm with you. I kind of think Concrete Glory and Macho Music won't do each other favors, but we got to keep an eye on the track. You never know. Gulfstream can be very speed favoring. At times this year, the rail has been really bad. Lately, it doesn't seem to be as much so we'll have to watch that. But I think Owen Almighty drawn on the outside could have an advantage tactically, depending on how things go. But if Pentathlon can handle down being on the inside, the rail's not bad, I think he'll be finishing. He just seems to be the now horse to me in here. So that was one you said you were waffling between him and Scotland. I definitely feel a lot more confident in Pentathlon, probably get a much better price than with Scotland.
That's what I was going to say, was if you're playing at the prices, between Scotland and Pentathlon, I completely agree with you that Pentathlon is the better bet at 8-1, not only for, the pace scenario and being able to improve now going into his 5-year-old year. Like you said, he ran super well going 7, first time out. Now second time out for Shug. He's been working super great at pacing. I completely agree with everything you said. I feel like if you're looking for a price to try and beat, again, favorites coming off a layoff, maybe a little bit of questions how they're going to run early, I agree. I think Pentathlon's the best bet in here, even though I did go with Scotland on top. Just looking at prices, if Pentathlon's double the price of Scotland, I'd be much more willing to bet Pentathlon than Scotland.
Well, we're all about the bets. So what do you think the bet is in this race? Is it Pentathlon or Scotland?
For me, the bet is Pentathlon, even though I'm picking Scotland on top. This race, when I'm waffling between these two, I've gotten a lot better over the last couple years, and I've had to be, frankly, about skipping races, being able to recognize when I don't have the best opinion, and whether it's a double from Tam Tam into these two horses that I like, Dutching wise, and for those that don't know, Dutching being messing with my bet amounts to be able to get the same payout on the back end. So I don't really care who wins as long as my bet hits. I hit for that same amount of money. That could be a way to go about it in this race. But again, when I'm waffling between the two, I've gotten very good about recognizing it and just skipping and moving on to my next best bet.
Well, I think there's 2 good points that are in there. One is there's nothing wrong with passing races. If you don't have a strong opinion, you can't found value, you should pass. So that's a good thing. And the other is being able to bet on a horse that's not your top pick or most likely winner is really key, because if the horse you think is most likely to win doesn't offer value, and you think that the next most likely to win horse does, that's the bet. So being able to get past your most likely winner and start focusing on value rather than just picking winners, that's another really important important way to improve your betting results. Passing races and focusing on value, not just the winners. Those are really key if you want long-term success. So that's really good discussion, really good points. But it sounds like, we'll have to wait and see what the prices are. But at 8-1, Scotland's 9-2 and pentathlon's 8-1. Your bet would be pentathlon in here probably if you're going to make a win bet. It sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. And this kicks off, the late pick 4, the coast to coast pick 5 that you mentioned, which doesn't have the teams in the pool, which is obviously a very retail friendly bet if you guys are looking to play a pick 5. I'm actually doing a show tonight on the coast to coast pick 5. The Santa Anita races are interesting to say the least, but if you're looking for some value, that could be the play too. If you don't have the best opinion, maybe spreading a little bit in this race. And if you have a big opinion in the Florida Derby or the Santa Anita races, that could be a good start to the coast to coast pick 5 if you are so inclined.
All right. Well, let's again, that was 15% takeout, and the teams supposedly don't participate. So I don't want to say pick 5s are the greatest bet. I think most people are in over their heads when they're playing the pick 5 just based on their bankroll and ticket structure and stuff. But if you're good at it and that's what you want to play, then that would be the kind of pool you want to play into, one with low takeout and no teams. If you're going to play the pick 5, that's the way to go.
And I've already mentioned it multiple times that I am very much in that camp that you mentioned, that pick 5s are not my bet, not my bankroll, frankly. I'll be completely honest with everyone. It just, I don't have enough confidence in it because I really just, if I don't have enough opinion in one race, I'm going to be spending, $50, $60 more to try and cover all the horses I think have a chance to win. And the next thing I know, you have to go super skinny in races that you don't really have a good opinion on. So, like I said, simple as possible. But if you are so inclined, it is a better bet than playing something. I believe the late pick 5 is like, 20 somewhere in the 20s in takeout. So maybe that's a different way to go.
Well, and the teams are participating,
Correct.
which is, as ITP would say, the mistake out is much higher on once the teams get in there. The retail players end up on average losing like 45-50% of their bankroll when they play into those.
Yep.
All right. So let's move on to race 12. Race 12. The Sand Springs going 1 mile and 16th on the turf for older fillies and mares. Another 2-turn turf race. Another one that looks pretty competitive. It does look like there will be, the favorite will be Sweet Rebecca at 5-2 on the morning line. Silver Moonlight close up 3-1, although I have a feeling Sweet Rebecca will be shorter than 5-2. What are you thinking? Are you going to lean on one of those, or are you looking elsewhere?
And this is one of those races, Chris, where I'm not afraid to bet the favorite, although I completely think you are right that she will not be 5-2. I'm going with Sweet Rebecca here. I really love the way she ran that last race off the layoff. Second time at Gulfstream, but second win. She makes her own race in that sense where she's tactical enough to be close. And, that last race wasn't necessarily against no one either, because Child of the Moon is a very nice horse for Chad Brown that came back off the layoff, ran an 86 in that race, and then came back in the Hillsborough on Tampa Bay Derby Day, did run fourth, however, got a 91 and should shape up really nicely for not only Keeneland, but the summer at Saratoga as well. So had to deal with that one, got a nice trip, but dealt with her very nicely. And I don't see a way that she doesn't just get the same trip again. There's not a whole lot of speed in this race. The horse they have on the lead is the number 5, Miss Mary Nell, who has been, although the last couple races, she hasn't necessarily been as fast as she was when she was 3 years old. So that's something to keep in mind as well. I just see a nice, really sweet pocket trip, no pun intended, for Sweet Rebecca. Tyler Gaffalione, Brendan Walsh, we all know how good that clip can be. And actually 25-26 with this 21%, and actually have a positive ROI of $2.12. So not the biggest ROI, but still positive. That's always a good sign to see, and should only have a big chance to improve second off that layoff. And if she improves off that 88, I feel like she could be really tough to beat.
Yeah, it's interesting. You don't see many horses go away from the Chad Brown barn, but this one did. And she ran well on her first start with Brennan Walsh. So yeah, a lot of positives there, except for the price. Probably it's the only negative. Anything else in this race? So I'll weigh in with a couple of opinions, but yeah, anything else beyond Sweet Rebecca, or is that kind of your really heavy lean there?
That is my really heavy lean. Although my other heavy lean is I'm going to go against Maggie Go to the inside. I don't think you'll get 6-1 on this horse either. Just Chad Brown, Flavian Pratt, Michael Dubb. That's inherently going to lose you value no matter what. Usually in these long turf races. But she's been good, but she really hasn't beat a whole lot of anything. Last time out, she beat La Cantera and Pretty Lavish. Both of those horses, La Cantera came back to run a 58 in an optional claiming synthetic race, and Pretty Lavish came back actually to run a 58 in that same exact race. So no improvement at all. Really didn't beat a whole lot, and now comes into this race where she's going to have to improve a pretty good amount in theory to beat horses like Sweet Rebecca. So that's going to be my big play against in here, even though she's going to be, somewhere third choice in there. Candy Quest is a horse at 7-2. I feel like might offer a lot of value just because with Chad Brown in there, with Sweet Rebecca taking a lot of money, and Silver Moonlight for Safi, who's 5 for 7 on the Gulfstream Park turf course, 7 for 7 if you want to count in the money. I think Candy Quest might drift up maybe a little bit, but she's probably kept the best company out of anyone. The QE2 was 4 lengths behind Lush Lips, and the DG Oaks was a half length behind Fionn. I just think a 1 3/8 is not necessarily her best distance. Now coming back to that 1.16 where she's 2 for 2 in the top 2, one of those winning a nice race at Gulfstream Park, granted an N1X. But I think people are going to leave Candy Quest out a little bit just with the other horses who are inside, working super well. And you get Castellano, who's probably ridden the Gulfstream Park turf course the best out of anyone. So if Sweet Rebecca does drop below that 5-2, we have a joking bet, which of course you should never do in a literal sense, but we call it the irresponsible wager of the week, Chris. And if Sweet Rebecca goes off at 2-1 or higher, it might be the irresponsible wager of the week time for Sweet Rebecca. But if not, if she goes lower, could see something like an exacta with Candy Quest. I do like Hang the Moon a little bit as well. That'll be one coming from off the pace. So maybe if the pace heats up a little more, you can bet Hang the Moon. But I think Candy Quest might be a little bit closer than that horse. So maybe an exacta combination with one of those two if Sweet Rebecca does get bet down to like something to 5.
So irresponsible meaning you bet more than you should. Is that what?
Irresponsible meaning it's your biggest bet of the weekend. Obviously, a joking sense from the irresponsible that you should never bet irresponsibly or above your means. But the biggest bet of the weekend will be this horse if she's above 2-1.
All right, so you really feel pretty strongly about Sweet Rebecca. That's going to be a heavy lean for you. I'll just offer a couple things. I think Hang the Moon is the play in here. That horse was really good as a 4-year-old. Kind of had a loss. Was it a 4-year-old? Let me look at her form. I'm going off memory.
She was a 4-year-old. Yep.
Yeah, as a 4-year-old, she had a really good year. Kind of had a lost year as a 5-year-old. I don't know what happened. Had the layoff. Didn't never really fire, and then switched barns. Went from California to Florida, and then I thought came back really with a nice effort for Safi, first time off the layoff. And, to me, her 4-year-old form can win this race. And 6-1 is a nice price. I think she's the most likely winner. And I think she's faster than Sweet Rebecca. And she will be farther back. So yeah, that could be an issue if they're not going fast. I'm just kind of counting on that 5 horse to keep Sweet Rebecca honest early. And I think Hang the Moon will be finishing. So to me, that is the play in this race. Now, assuming that she doesn't get bet down well below that morning line, which could happen, but I don't anticipate it. But for me, at 6-1, definitely Hang the Moon would be the play. And then just a couple prices. To me, this is a race where, I just don't think Sweet Rebecca, I don't share your enthusiasm with her. I think she's solid, but not any faster than most of the rest of the field. Mm-hmm. And I don't see why she would improve that much as a 5-year-old, even second off the layoff. So I'm going to try to beat her. And I think there's some big prices that could get in there. Like one of them is the 9 Ashima, who's 20 to 1 on the morning line. I'm not saying necessarily as a win bet, but if I'm thinking of, Keen hang the moon. Ashima has run well on both turf and synth, and she's in really good form right now. So there's no reason why she couldn't hit the board at a price. And then the other one I'm kind of interested in is Yes It Is, who started its career on turf, been running on dirt recently, but now they're going back on the turf, and her dirt form has been good. And if she stays, and she ran fine on the turf as well, so the switch back and surfaces doesn't seem to be an issue. And she's 12 to 1 morning line, so those are two kind of long shots I might try to get underneath. Hang the moon in the verticals, but I think hang the moon is the win bet and the way you should go if you're playing horizontals.
Oh, and I honestly, I like that a lot. And, I mentioned hang the moon. I have the horse in third. And if she gets back to that form, which that's my only, and that's my concern, if she can get back to that 4-year-old form, being a 6-year-old now. But not only that, but the pace scenario, that was also my kind of concern, although she has been able to sit a little closer in the past. But, last time out, they did go 46-2. So that even on the Gulfstream Park Tour, of course, that's cooking pretty good. And she was still able to sit, 3.5 back. So you could be exactly right with Hang the Moon. And I like Ashima. There's no reason why this horse realistically should be 7 to 1, even though the last two have been slower races and on the synthetic. Her turf form is really no worse than anyone in this field. 6 for 7 on the Gulfstream Park turf in the money. And you might be able to argue that synthetic is her better surface, being 9 for 13. But at 20 to 1, she could easily outrun her odds.
Yeah. I mean, she's pretty solid on either one, it seems like. Same with Yes It Is. She's never really run a bad race. And they're not any slower than the favorites. I mean, it depending on what numbers you're looking at. So we'll see. I mean, I have a feeling Sweet Rebecca is going to be heavily bet in here, well below that 5 to 2 morning line, but we'll see. You never know. All right, anything else on this race before we move on to the 13th?
Nope. And but the only thing I will say was if the horse does get bet down, that being Sweet Rebecca, I think that changes a lot of my betting strategy. And that's one thing also I feel like people should learn to recognize and learn to, if your horse gets bet below, even if for me, like she's my best bet of the weekend, but if she goes off at 7 to 5, that's way too low for me to make any money that I want to make with this horse. But 2, just it's below the value line that I'm setting. And if it's below the value line, there's no sense in betting it. Even if she does end up winning by 3, will I be upset? Yeah, maybe a little from a pride standpoint, because, your best bet, you want to make money, but there's other ways, you can make like I'll probably make an exacta if she goes off at that with Hang the Moon underneath. It's a couple others, something like that. But just being able to recognize that even though she's your best bet, if she goes off way lower than you want, there's no sense in betting that when if she does lose and you bet, the most amount and you're like, why did I bet that much when she was 7 to 5? I wanted 5 to 2. So I feel like that's something else to recognize.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to change the words a little bit. Your most likely winner on the weekend is Sweet Rebecca, but she's not your best bet unless she goes off at a decent price.
Correct.
So if she's 7 to 5, she's not your best bet, right?
Yes,
she's just and you're not going to bet her. So what would be what is your price you're looking for on Sweet Rebecca? What will make her your best bet?
Honestly, Chris, I know you don't like her that much. I would take 2 to 1. I think 2 to 1 is inherent value because I can see a little bit of improvement off that. She's very lightly raced. So I think she might jump up to somewhere low 90s, and that's definitely good enough to win this race. That's not necessarily out of the realm. She ran the 90 at Keeneland. So 2 to 1 is it. Below that, I would definitely not take. I'd even be maybe a little hesitant, but 2 to 1 low. And if she somehow goes off at 5 to 2, I will definitely be hammering her.
Yeah, I'll be surprised to get 5 to 2, maybe 2 to 1. So, you'll have to wait and see. And you'll have to be looking at the will pays and stuff to figure out if you think she's going to be playable in the win pool. All right, let's move on to race number 13. This one is the first graded stakes of the sequence. It's kind of interesting how they spread the races around the entire card. Typically they stack them, the graded stakes at the end, but they didn't do that. So we have the grade 3 Pan American Turf. This is going 1.5 miles. So this is like the marathon distance. And we're going to have a heavy favorite in here, Farbridge, another horse coming off a layoff. And the second choice probably will be Corruption, although it looks like Dashman's 3-1 on the morning line is the second choice on the morning line, but Corruption will probably be buying for second choice as well. He's coming off a layoff. What are you thinking in this race? Are you going to lean on Farbridge or Corruption or looking elsewhere?
Are you sensing a theme here, Chris? two horses off the layoff. I'm going to try and play against again. I know Farbridge looks the goods. He always has. I was a fan of his really before he kind of took off. I had him in that Sword Dancer, which was very nice. I had him also with an exacta over measured time. I loved him in that Turf Classic that he ran at Aqueduct. He's very good. And he's been very good at Gulfstream. He did this exact move last year with Kristoff, of course, rest his soul. But after the Breeders', even though Farbridge didn't run in the Breeders' Cup this year, he ran the Breeders' Cup, then came back with this Pan American. That's the exact route that Miguel's taking. So he could easily win this race. And if he wins by 3, I wouldn't exactly be surprised. I am going with the Dashman in this race. 3-1. I think you're right, Chris. I think Corruption will end up being second choice in here. So 7-2, 4-1 for Dashman against 2 horses, albeit maybe a little better, but coming off of layoffs. And there's a really interesting tidbit in here that people will look at the form and see pretty quickly. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not one too much for the jockey gymnastics game, but I know it's Pratt, but why is Rosario not on Farbridge? He's ridden him 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, last 9 times. Even through the Breeders' Cup, through multiple grade 1s, a multiple graded stake winner on this horse, and multiple grade 1 winner for that matter on this horse. But somehow he ends up on the Dashman. And last time out really was not his style, completely against it, kind of ran one pace all the way through. But this horse's best game is at that marathon distance, at that 1 5/16, 1 3/8, 1.5 is when this horse really does shine. And Rosario rode him last time, maybe to catch a little bit. Cruise the Nile in that race also got away with murder. That was on Fountain of Youth Day, and going 47-2 and 110. Not slow necessarily, but for the Gulfstream Park turf course with the rails out, that was pretty slow. So getting back to the distance that he loves, Brian Lynch has been on fire as he usually is during this Gulfstream Park meet. And Rosario hops aboard this one. I really do like this horse in this race. And there is actually a little bit of pace in here. While it's not the biggest means to me when looking at these 1.5 mile marathon races, because a lot of horses make their own trips. The Farbridge is going to be pretty close. Echo Lane to his outside might give him a little bit of issues going up front. Brother Kenny's pretty quick, and Corruption to the inside has been quick as well. So if Dashman just sits in behind and gets in a good spot at the top of the lane, if you're talking 4-1 on this horse, I feel like that might just be a better bet than Farbridge, who's probably going to go off, even money 6-5.
Yeah, the rider change on Farbridge, this is kind of interesting. It might just be, Rosario was Christophe Clement's first call rider, but maybe, Miguel is enthralled with Joel as his father was. So
and
we'll see.
I'll be completely honest. It's like, would you rather have Pratt or Rosario? I feel like a lot of people would say Pratt. As I joke on my show, I'd trust him with any horse. I'd even trust him with my firstborn child if I had the case to do that. But, it might just be the case that Pratt was available and you take Pratt. But I thought it was at least an interesting tidbit.
Well, I think on his best, Rosario's about as good as Pratt. The problem is he's not always on his best, where Pratt's much more consistent. And this Farbridge isn't the easiest horse to ride. He's kind of quirky, so Rosario rode him enough to know him. So it'll be interesting. That switch is kind of interesting.
And so, real quick, sorry, Chris, to interrupt.
Oh, go ahead.
But Someone brought up a good point. I don't know if this is the case. It probably isn't. But Dashman's working very forwardly off that last race, and he's coming back into his 5-year-old year. Maybe Farbridge has been working well, 2 for 46 last time, but this almost kind of seems like it's maybe a prep for something down the line, maybe the Elkhorn at Keeneland or something like that. Last year, he ran the Pan American into the Man of War. Because this race is only 225 and Farbridge is probably above that. I wonder if Miguel maybe said, and this is complete speculation on my part and can be, completely, but just trying to read into the trainer intent. Maybe Farbridge is not 100% coming into this race, and maybe he doesn't need to be 100% to win it. But, maybe they say, Joel, you can go look for something else, and we bring you back on when he's fully ready. I'm not sure. I don't see why Rosario would hop off. And maybe Rosario didn't even have a choice. Maybe Miguel wants Pratt, like you mentioned, Chris. So there's just a lot of things to try and read into intent-wise, I think, here.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, Farbridge is a multiple grade 1 winner, so
Right.
This isn't the objective on the season. So he's not going to be fully cranked. Like you said, he could maybe still win, and they don't like, but this is not an objective for the year with him. He's clearly able to win. He used to be able to win better races. We'll see. He's a 6-year-old now. You never know. But for older turf horses, especially by English Channel, 6-year-olds shouldn't be an issue at all. He ought to still be able to run well. But, I'm willing to try to beat him in here for sure off the layoff. And the fact this is probably not a target race. It sounds like Dashman's the way you're going to go on here. What price are you looking for on Dashman to make him playable? He's 3-1 morning line.
In which I was very surprised when I saw the 3-1 there. I guess the win in the Willie L. McKnight is probably giving a little bit of credit to that, but I'm thinking like 9-2, 4-1, because I think Corruption for Safi will also get bet, or sorry, Marcassi, excuse me, will get bet down pretty heavily in this race. He's 4 for 5 on the Gulfstream Park turf course, multiple mid-90s buyers on his record as well. So, but I think 9-2 is probably a good enough price to try and bet. And Sons of Oscar Performance usually do very well at this type of marathon turf. So that's kind of my value line. I'd say 4-1 would be absolute lowest. However, I'd be looking more towards 9-2 or 5-1.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think might go off above that 3-1. I'm just not sure how much, but we'll see. Because he will be the third choice, I think. But I just don't know how heavily they're going to bet Farbridge off the break. And Dashman does show all these that those times are always fast at that Palm Meadows turf course. But I mean, 58 and change, 46 and change, 57 change. He's working up pretty fast for this. And that last was probably a prep for longer. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. And Brian Lynch has been winning. I have a feeling you might not get your 9-2.
Which is very fair.
Yeah. No, so anyway, we'll see. The other thing, the Lasix will come off for this race for him too, I think, because this is a greatest stakes. So he was on Lasix last time. He has a couple wins on Lasix. I don't know. He's run well without it too. But it's interesting that his 2 of his wins came with Lasix. He had 1 win without it. So we'll see. Okay, so this race is where I have a crazy long shot. Sometimes I have these. The thing I tend to focus on the most in these races is the distance. Most U.S. horses aren't really cut out to go 1.5 miles. That's why I like the Euro influence. And I've got a horse. He's kind of crazy, but the 10-horse Soloway is very interesting to me. In his Euro form, he started his career, his first, 3, 6, 7 starts. Most were on the cent. Most were going shorter. And he was bad. I mean, he was terrible. He was getting trounced in every race. He never hit the board. But then they ran him on turf for the first time going more than 1.25 miles, 1.5 miles, 5/16, and he just galloped. He won by 5 lengths. Probably improved by 10 or 20 lengths from all his prior races to when he stretched out on the turf. Then his next start, they put him back on cent for some reason. He didn't run that bad. It was his best race by far ever on the cent. But then they stretched him back out on the turf going a mile and 5/16 again, and he won handily by a length and a quarter in a 13-horse field. So this horse is a completely different horse once you get into the longer distances. And he's made 3 U.S. starts, and his first start was going short, which is not his game, in a race that had no pace, and he still hit the board. And then his second start was off the turf. I don't know why they ran in it, but he just basically got eased on the dirt. But I just tossed that race. They tried again going a mile and 16th, and again in a paceless race, and again he ran third. And now they're finally putting him where he's going to run his best race, which is going long on the turf. The problem is there's just not many opportunities to do that unless you go into like a graded stakes race. So this might be too deep of waters, but he ran an 84 buyer on his U.S. debut, and he was 10 or 20 lengths better when they stretched him out in Europe. So if he improves by 10 or 20 lengths off an 84 buyer, he has a chance in here, especially if Farbridge and Corruption don't fire off the layoff. And the horse that you like, Dashman's last couple races, let's see, other than one race where he fired a big 99 buyer, he's been in the 80s all the other times. So to me, Soloway, who's 30-1 in the morning line and could go off at 50-1 given the connections and the form, is a legitimate horse to at least hit the board and might even pull off a shocker. So this is my crazy play of the day. I'm going to go with the 10 Soloway. And I'll be playing him on top, but I'm going to probably him underneath too and some of the exotics, because to me, he's like, one of these bomb keys that you could hit. Maybe if he doesn't win, you could still make a score. So
and
that's my crazy pick.
I don't think you're that crazy, Chris. I think everything you brought is a very legitimate point. And again, I'll give another nice shout out to one of my other co-hosts, Andrew, who had this horse in second as well. And he said exactly what you thought. And there's really no reason why this horse can't improve over the mile and a half and at least outrun his odds at, what's probably going to be 50-1, like you mentioned. So I could completely see it. I don't think you're that crazy.
All right, we'll see. He's also good. He could run his much better and still, be, or he might not run at all. But at 50-1, I think he's a legit chance. It's not like he's a total stretch. I mean, off the numbers, if you project the kind of improvement that he showed in Europe when he stretched out to the longer distances, and this is even longer. This is going a mile and a half, and I have a feeling the longer they go, the better this guy's going to be. Who knows what his upside is. He doesn't have the greatest rider, and he comes from a barn where the trainer doesn't win a lot, but this horse for that rider and that trainer has run pretty well in races where he had no chance, going shorter with absolutely zero pace to close into. So anyway, he's the kind that this is the kind of horse you can score on at a big price. It's also the kind of horse that may, not run a jump, but so it's not, you don't want to make what was you called the irresponsible bet of the week on this horse, but I think he's playable. So
and there's in the Galloway breeding, I mean, there's a lot of horses that go long. I mean, just off the top, you have Sealaway, who was a grade 2 placed horse at a mile and a quarter. A group 1 show horse at a mile and 5/16. Go even farther down, you have Sunway, who was second at St. Cloud over a mile and 5/16, mile and a half. He was second in the Irish Derby at a mile and a half. So the breeding's there for this type of jump. So again, I see no reason why he can't jump up. But I guess the more and more we talk about this horse at 50-1, either he's not going to be 50-1 or he's going to be 50 lengths back. I think the more and more we talk about him. Yeah.
Well, he went off at in an allowance optional claimer. He was almost 20-1. So I think he'll be 50-1. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. And, given the connections, they're not going to get bet. So we'll see. Anyway, he's the horse I'm the most interested in on the card. It's not too many times I find a horse that's going to be a huge price that I think has a legit shot. And I know the distance angle I've scored quite a bit on in my lifetime playing the ponies and these longer races. they don't always pan out. And this kind of horse, particularly, they're not going to win. They're going to win a lot less often and they're going to lose a lot more often than they win. But if you can catch one of these every 5 or 10 times, you're way ahead of the game. So, all right, enough of that crazy long shot talk. Let's go to the race everyone wants to talk about. It's the Grade 1 Florida Derby. Shouldn't be a Grade 1. I always say they shouldn't have these Derby preps be Grade 1s, but this is a solid field. And that Grade 1's important. That's a stallion making win. None of these horses have a Grade 1 win. So, you hear all the talk about the Derby and Derby points and stuff, but, just getting that Grade 1 on the resume for a stallion prospect is huge. So I don't think these guys are going to be coming in, not really firing their best shot of the favorites, and there are 3 of them I think are going to clearly vie for favoritism: the 2 Chief Wallaby, the 4 Commandment, and the 6 Nearly. And the Puma will, get a little respect, but I think he's clearly a notch or 2 below those 2. In fact, he got kind of trounced by Chief Wallaby in his debut. So I'd be a little surprised if he won. I'm not even sure why he's in this race. Given that he already won the Tampa Bay Derby and he could go to the Derby off, but maybe they just wanted to get one more race. They didn't want to go straight to the Derby from the Tampa Bay. But anyway, I'll let you talk about what you think about these 3. Are you going to go somewhere else, or are you going to kind of focus in on one of these? What are you thinking about in this race?
There's 2 things before I give my top pick out. One, I do echo your sentiments completely on the Puma. I was very interested to see him entered in here, considering he has 50 points into the Derby. And, maybe they didn't want to ship to somewhere like, Lexington or something like that. Maybe they're too worried it goes quick to the Derby. But, coming back in 3 weeks here from the Tampa Bay Derby, I thought it was a very bold and one interesting move by, obviously the connections are really good. The same exact connections with Mage. So trying to get maybe one more race into him, but I echo your sentiments completely. The other thing I wanted to say was, if one of the big 3 doesn't win, I'd be extremely surprised. This is a very top heavy Florida Derby where there's a lot of, others in like Albus, the ones coming out of a maiden race, a very nice one at that, but that's a big step. Wayne's Law finished second to Renegade at 48-1 in the Sam F. Davis. Rebel and Rebels is also one coming in from the Tampa Bay Derby, also cross-entered. It's just, I don't think anyone's necessarily up to snuff of the top 3 in here. And there's one horse that I'm a big fan of, and I have a little bit of a gripe with people how they treated his last race, and that is the number 4 Commandment. I thought him and Chief Wallaby's trips were very comparable. Honestly, I know that Commandment got the rail open, Irad took it, and Chief Wallaby had to go wide and all this, but Chief Wallaby it was wide the whole time, no dirt in his face, able to get the type of momentum around the bend. Commandment had to wait to the inside. And I'm not saying, Commandment had a worse trip than Chief Wallaby by any means. I don't think that's inherently true at all. But I think their trips are very comparable, where Chief Wallaby got the jump per se going around the outside, and Commandment had to wait. And then once the inside opened, he had to accelerate, and accelerate he did. And you talked about the rail, Chris, and I know coming, more to the later part of the championship meet, the rail hasn't been as bad, but it looked real bad there for a while. And Commandment making that rail move, I was very excited to see that. And I have my own personal gain with Commandment if he does end up winning this, and ultimately he has to win the Derby, of course. But I haven't really mentioned it either on my show or to anyone, but I do have a future bet on Commandment for a nice score for myself. So I'm very interested to see how he runs. I listened to Brad Cox in an interview from Payson the other day, and Brad's extremely happy with how he's been working in the mornings and has no concern about the distance at all. I think the last time was that test to see if he could go the 2 turns, and he passed it really with flying colors, in my opinion. And people that watch that replay, I know there's been a lot of talk about it on Twitter and stuff like that, but the gallop out when Irad tried to keep him a little bit interested, and he spurted away again. And I obviously know no one else is, targeting the gallop for a little bit extra, but just seeing the ears pricked at the wire, being able to make another quick little move past the wire to see how much more he has in the tank. I love him going the mile and an eighth. I think this will only be a nice springboard into the Kentucky Derby, which in theory he's already in based off the point scenario. But even there's a lot of talk also about people, not him being fully cranked up because of the, he's already into the Derby. I don't think that's true either, Chris, because what you mentioned is him, getting that grade 1 win. This race is also for $1 million. Like, these connections are not going to pass that up in terms of stallion value, because we all know that, it could be a pretty quick turn in horse racing. I know that all too well, as my Derby horse last year with Tapan Street unfortunately met that end, and knock on all the wood in my office that does not happen here. But I'm very, very interested in Commandment. I really like him on Saturday. Think he's going to sit a really nice trip again and be able to come out on top. But that's no discrediting to the other two, and Chief Wallaby and Nearly. And the thing I want to mention about the trips as well is that's no discredit to Chief Wallaby at all. Chief Wallaby ran fantastic in that race, only being beat by a neck. I think these two are your top Derby contenders right now. Maybe Paladin, as he's probably rounds out the top 3, but he has to get a little bit quicker based on that last race in the Fountain of Youth. We saw the Derby winner here last year, ultimately not winning this race last year. But my hope is that the same, selfishly, is we see that same type of scenario here with Commandment.
So, would you make a win bet on Commandment? What price are you looking for to make a win bet on him in here?
I am going to make a win bet on him. I think just inherently with Nearly and Chief Wallaby, I think Nearly will be the pretty clear-cut third choice in here. But I've seen a lot of people gravitating to him, watching around a bunch of podcasts. A lot of my co-hosts like Nearly. So we might even get a better price than I think. I'm hoping for 2-1, 5-2 on Commandment. And as I mentioned at the start of the show, I don't shy away from playing favorites, especially since I've gotten better about picking my spots. If, I'm only playing 3 or 4 races on the entire card, I have the ability to bet a little bit more, which makes the favoritism a little more viable for my type of bankroll and my type of strategy. But if he goes if he goes below 2-1, I don't know if I'd place a win bet on him. But if he's going to be vying for favoritism between Wallaby, Commandment, and Nearly, I think he's good enough to place a win bet on.
Yeah, you might get 2-1. You might get that on him. He'll be vying for favoritism with those 3. I think they're all going to be pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they all deserve to be pretty close. To me, it wasn't so much Commandment got a better trip than Chief Wallaby. It's just, at that point in time in their careers, Commandment should win.
Right. That's fair.
Chief Wallaby had only sprinted. It was his second start, first time going long. To me, he has a lot more upside. So the time for Commandment to beat him was that time. And, I'm not sure he's going to beat him in here. To me, Chief Wallaby is the horse that's impressed me the most in his early performances. So between those two, I'm kind of in the other camp, at least for this race. We'll wait and see. After this race, I might have a completely different opinion. But going into this race, I think, Chief Wallaby looks like the most talented 3-year-old out there right now. And doesn't mean he's going to win. And doesn't mean I'm right. But that's kind of how. So I would have to lean that way between those two. But, Nearly, to me, has a lot of talent. He hasn't done anything wrong. And at Gulfstream Park, being forwardly placed is a good thing. And this horse may have a tactical edge on those two. Mm-hmm. One thing I'll mention, Redland Rebels will scratch. He's running at Oaklawn.
That's right. Yes, I forgot.
So that's one of the speed horses that are gone. The other one is just kind of a horse coming out of a maiden race, gregarious. So if they decide to send him, which they might, I think Johnny V will just stalk him. If they don't, he'll put Nearly on the lead. And, Todd and Johnny B have won a lot of grade 1 races with this kind of horse and this kind of setup. So I think that horse is a lot, certainly capable of winning. If I were going to have to rank order the chances of winning, I'd go Chief Wallaby 1, Nearly 2, and Commandment 3. So I'd actually put him third. Not a big difference between all of them. Just I give Nearly the tactical edge.
Mm-hmm.
I give Chief Wallaby the talent and upside edge. But Commandment is the proven commodity. And I certainly don't think the distance is going to be an issue with him. But they're not that far apart, but that's how I'd rank them. And I don't think any of them are worth a bet in here. This is a race I would definitely pass, just be watching. But that's kind of how I'd rank them. And going forward, I definitely will reassess after this race. I think this will be a great race. The Derby favorite probably comes out of this race. I know a lot of people like Paladin. He's never really run fast. Unless he runs a fast race next time out, I don't see how, the winner of this race doesn't come out as the favorite, but we'll see. That's kind of how I'm seeing this. This is a good Derby prep. 3 real solid horses. Nothing wrong with the Puma either. He's a nice horse. I just think he might be a cut below these. And this race he's not coming into this race, like you said, on the short turnaround. It's kind of a weird spot for him. If there is a horse in here that's not totally cranked up trying to win it, it would be him, I think, not the other 3.
I completely agree with that sentiment. And as I mentioned before, it's just a very interesting spot to put him in. So it'll be very interesting to see how he runs. And not only that, how much money he takes, because if he isn't fully cranked up, as we mentioned, that could be, maybe boost a little bit of value on the back end, even with the top 3 being so heavily going to be so heavily well backed. Yeah,
I think he'll be a distant 4th choice. I mean, he'll certainly be by far. None of the other horses are going to take any money. I mean, the 1, 4, 7, and 9 aren't going. And if one of those wins, it'll be a shocker, and they'll pay a big price. But the Puma will attract some money, especially in the exotic. People might try to hook him up with one of the others. So I don't think he's playable at any price either. I mean, you're going to get a price that would make him playable.
And I agree. If you don't have a strong opinion on any one of these, Chris, like I said, if you're waffling between them, I don't think any one of them have any value to be able to play. But if you do have a strong opinion here, with everyone being so close in price, as long as you can get over, the 5-2 price, I feel like that might warrant a win bet, just because of how close all of them are going to be and inherently making each other's price a little bit higher. But if you don't have the strongest opinion like I do about Commandment or Chief Wallaby or whatever, I think it's a definite pass.
Yeah, and if in the picks, though, even if you didn't play to win, if you singled one of the 3, because everyone will probably be trying to include all 3 of them.
Yep.
Or at least 2 of the 3. People won't be singling this race. So in the picks, that's play like your Commandment. You like him a lot. Even if you don't get your win price, you could single him in some of the picks that's not your kind of play. But I mean, people who like to play those types of bets, then you are, they're probably splitting that. The tickets are probably getting split across those 3 pretty evenly in the picks, I would guess. But one other thing I just mentioned about Nearly, he's been training really well. I was really impressed in his morning workouts. The other 2 are training well too, but Nearly is like really sharp right now. I think he's going to run a good race. I think the track kind of favors his style. The race shape will probably favor him. But Commandment, Chief Wallaby might just be better. And especially Chief Wallaby. He could be, a really nice horse. He's looked really good in his first 2 starts. So we'll see. That's why they run the races, and that's why you need to reassess after every race. Don't get too stuck on a horse, even if you have a future bet on it.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, you're 100% right, because if Chief Wallaby runs the race that a lot of people think you will, you easily have to reassess and bias aside. It's race by race basis. Sometimes the race doesn't set up like if Commandment runs second here, even third, I wouldn't be surprised, but that necessarily doesn't dissuade me for later races. It's just all on the reassess and move forward.
Right. Yeah, he could run third, and that might set him up fine for the Derby if he gets it might be not get the right trip here, but he could get it there. I mean, just exactly. Like we saw last year. The winner of the Florida Derby didn't even make the race, and the runner-up won and was horse of the year. So, All right. Anything else? So what for on the day then? What's your well, I guess we know your best. The bet you really want to make is Sweet Rebecca, right? If you get the price.
Yep, and it's, like I said, I kind of already hinted at it a little bit, but Tam Tam, I'll probably put a bet on 5-1, 9-2, 4-1, somewhere in there is a good enough price to take a shot. Probably not my biggest bet base wise of the entire day, but definitely one I'm willing to make. You mentioned it, Sweet Rebecca. I agree, as long as she doesn't get bound to something, bet down to something to 5. But again, there's other ways to make value with those types of horses, either exactas or doubles. And then if a commandment, I'll probably place a win bet on. Again, might not be the biggest one because there is a lot of other good competition in there, but feel like the inherent value might be there as long as you have a strong opinion like I do.
Makes sense. Yeah, for me, it's Soloway is the one I'm excited about.
I'm very excited to see how that horse runs too, Chris. Because if that horse runs very well, I think not only that, but people will give a lot of credit to people like you that have a good opinion on him. So, and one you can easily make money with.
Yeah, for sure. That's what I'm hoping for. I think there's some playable other horses we've mentioned. I won't go back through those, but it's not a bad sequence. The only race I don't see that I see as kind of unbettable for me is really the feature race. And I'll enjoy watching that one. And I might play, some picks into somebody. Probably would be Chief Wallaby of the 3, but maybe Nearly. I have a feeling he's going to be the third choice.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, he may have, he's training well and he's got that tactical edge. So I don't have a real strong opinion. Certainly no win bet in that race, but I might try to have, be live to something there if I'm right about some of the prior races. Because certainly doubles with Soloway. I'll probably have some kind of double into the last race and the prior race with him.
And the thing is, Chris, is with the feature race, a lot of people are like, oh, we have to bet the feature, because it's the feature. And that's not necessarily always the case. If you don't have a strong opinion, you can pass. And if you're up money on the day, you save your profit and you move on to another day. Because not only is this week big, next week is also very big because we have 3 more big Derby preps coming up.
Yeah, and a lot of times the feature races aren't the great betting races. They tend to have small fields and kind of standout favorites, especially nowadays. So, yeah, from a betting standpoint, it's fun to talk about on podcasts and to watch and handicap. But from a betting standpoint, those often aren't the best races. And I think this is a great example of where, yeah, that's a fun race to talk about. It's going to be a fun race to watch. It's an important stepping stone towards the Derby. But from a betting standpoint, I'm not really interested at all. So,
yeah. Sometimes
all right.
Like that.
Okay. Anything else you want to add before we wrap things up?
No, like you said, Chris, thanks again for having me on. And hopefully the viewers did enjoy. Always greatly appreciate you having me on here, and always happy to come back. So don't ever be a stranger. Greatly appreciate it. But if you don't mind, I guess I'll just plug a couple things for myself.
Yeah, go ahead. Give a chance. Plug your podcast. Go ahead and do that.
And then, so I have my Twitter is at AP Roscoe K. For those that follow Chris on Twitter, you already did see that. I post my picks and I try to be as transparent as possible with all the bets that I play because, what's the good in a podcast host or I guess a tout in that regard if you're not as completely transparent as possible. So at AP Roscoe K, of course, AP standing for my Great Late Arlington Park. But if you are interested, follow me over there. Greatly appreciate it. But we also do a podcast every single Wednesday. It is 8 p.m. Eastern. We do these live so that we can have chat interaction with you guys talking about the races. It is youtube.com/HHH Racing Podcast. And my show, as Chris mentioned before, is what everyone loves to do, betting and boozing. Again, Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. So go check that out. And Chris, thanks again for letting me come on. Appreciate it.
Well, thanks for joining us. And since you plugged your show, I'll got to plug my book one last time.
Absolutely.
Betting on Horses. Go to Bet with the Best Media, all one word.com. Yeah, order the book. I think you won't regret it. There'll be something in there for you if you're a horse player. And if you like it, let me know. And please spread the word.
And you should go buy it because, and Chris will never tell you this, but since I'm here, I can toot his horn a little bit, considering that a fantastic contest player, fantastic horse picker in his own right. You can only benefit from reading a book like that. So I would highly recommend you go check it out, as I already have. So,
and even if you don't believe Kyle, there's a lot of really sharp players that share their wisdom in the book. I mean,
Yep.
some of the legends of the game, some of the best professionals that have ever played it. So, you're going to get their wisdom. And I throw in a few tidbits as well, but I just try to weave it together into a form that hopefully you could make use of and to improve your handicapping. So
Nice.
betwiththebestmedia.com. Please go out there. But and I thank you, Kyle, for joining us and the listeners for listening. But that'll conclude things. That'll show number 354 Sport of Kings podcast. Good luck this weekend, and please enjoy the Brooklyn Boogaloo Blowout. Cheers.